Hello, hello, hello. Hope everyone's having a fun-filled day, and we will get this started. I will do my intro, and I will bring Greg up, but we'll get this started like we normally do. And people, hold on to your safety belts because this is going to get interesting.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light
what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming,
whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight
were the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming,
and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air,
gave proof through the night that our flag was still there.
Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Hello, Hollywood. I hope.
AC is in the building. RGKS is in the building. And I'm just going to do what I do. Y'all just sit back and watch this. You are watching the Real Greg Kelly Show, hosted by none other than Ice Cold. Ice Cold AC. Ain't nothing like that Ice Cold AC. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Love y'all. Thanks for being here. All the new mods. Brooke and Taylor, I'm trying to get over to the other side so I can see everybody. This is going to be another doozy. Part 2. Dr. Birx dropping bombs. You're watching the Real Greg Kelly Show. I will be right back after this.
Coast to coast instrumentals.
Okay. Woo. AC, talk about it, man. What went down last night? What were your thoughts last night about what we saw last night? Break it down for the people.
It was just a bunch of bullcrap. It was a bunch of bullcrap that this freaking government was trying to spill to us, and it's not, for the most part, a lot of us that are watching this right now knew that they were lies. I'm just going to say it that way. They were lies because there's a thing going around Facebook. I won't say exactly what it says, but they thought of every which way just to get us to do something, and it didn't work. Why is that? Maybe because we know about the Tuskegee Institutes, what they did back then. Just saying. Right. This isn't the first time this shit has happened. Probably won't be the last either, but I do want to say hey to everybody down below. We are going to get into this because people need to know this. So, the people
ain't Taylor Made supposed to be here?
What?
I said, isn't Taylor Made supposed to be here?
Taylor Made, get your ass up here.
Stop playing with me.
Get your ass up here, Taylor. Taylor Made. I like that. I love the nicknames, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
But Greg, what did you think of it because you told me before we actually did the stream that you really didn't watch all of it. What did you think of all the information?
Well, I thought number one, it was exhilarating. Again, it was something that I believe we already knew anyway. That, these people weren't being honest. We kept watching the flip flop and we kept watching, and it was like, oh wait, just a damn minute. What did she just say? What did she just say? Back it up. What did she just say? Like, put the brakes on. Skirt. Did she just say that she advised against the nursing home, people being released from the hospital, being put in nursing homes? Did she just say she advised against locking down the school for the children because she was afraid of the psychological, emotional, and suicidal, tendencies that would be developed in the minds of these children? Did she just say that? She said that. And yeah, man, it was unbelievable.
And Miss Nick tried to get her to come up here. This is what Taylor said right before that.
I'm doing the AAR on Rumble. You know what?
I am actually watching Rumble as we speak, Taylor. Because I will actually show you something. I got Rumble up and running that I am watching this right now over there.
Okay.
Just got it muted so I do not have to hear myself. Morning, Trains.
Yes, Trains. How you doing? It's morning where Trains is?
They're over across the pond.
Oh.
They're across the pond.
Salute. This is a serious matter. Just let me know when you're ready to go and jump in this and rock and roll. So we listen. It gets better. That's all I can tell you. I looked at a few frames of it earlier. It gets better. It gets better.
Should we show the corruption that was the response?
Yeah, why not?
Greg, it's on you. I'm going to go and turn this off and let you have the screen. If you need me, I will be around.
I will holler. All right, y'all, here we go. Let's go ahead and jump into this. Let's go ahead and finish up. This is part 2. Deborah Birx testifying before Congress, June 23rd, 2022, the day before Roe versus Wade. It was swept under the rug, got no media coverage. Here we go.
Dr. Birch, I'm going to begin by asking the question. When we saw in the clips up there, President Trump saying that the virus would just go away, was that a hope or a lie?
I don't know. I can't speak to what he was thinking. I think a lot of these statements that are made concerning the virus often reflect people's hopeful thinking.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to ask you about a statement that you made to our staff. During your interview with the Select Subcommittee's staff, you said that during the fall of 2020, the Trump White House officials spent time campaigning instead of at the White House, and that this focus, I'm quoting you here, took people's time away from and distracted them away from the pandemic, end of quote. What did you observe to lead you to that conclusion?
We had assembled the data and analyses that I believed, and I believe to this day, really pointed out where virus was and where it wasn't, and where we need to apply our mitigation efforts. Normally, I could find people to have those discussions about what was not going optimally, either in the task force meetings or in direct communications in the hallways. It was very difficult throughout the summer and the fall of 2020 to find those individuals. That is not to say that I stopped for 1 minute interacting with governors and mayors and being on the road, but it's another reason why I went on the road, to ensure the messages were getting out, despite the fact that the White House was distracted about its re-elections.
Well, thank you. I think we all have been noticing with the current hearings taking place through the January 6th committee that even after the election, White House officials were engaged in the president's efforts to overturn the will of the voters. Now, Dr. Birx, you recently wrote, and I'm quoting here, aggrieved over the election results, some in the West Wing appeared willing to engage in a dereliction of duty. What did you mean by that?
So I optimistically throughout September and October had created a false strategy for full implementation. Of course, I would have wanted to start it earlier, but I believed, and I was given reason to believe, that after the election, that strategy would be utilized to combat the surge that I knew was coming to the United States throughout that fall and winter of 2020 into 2021. That strategy was never fully executed in all of its robust and comprehensive approach, because the teams were never brought back together, or that strategy, that what I thought was endorsed by the West Wing, was never executed. I believe it is because that they were distracted by the post-election issues.
Well, thank you very much. The chair will recognize Mr. Jordan for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doctor, should the United States be in the World Health Organization?
The United States should both be part of the World Health Organization, but working with all the member states to create the necessary reforms that are required.
Did you support leaving the World Health Organization during the Trump administration?
No.
Okay, I'm looking at Dr. Javar's transcript from his deposition. He said, I can tell you from the task force, it surprised me, but Dr. Birx was one of the leading advocates for pulling out of the WHO. So was he stating something that was not true there?
There was a difference between withholding funding versus pulling out of the WHO.
Oh, well, let's ask it that way. Should we be giving them what, $500 million a year, I think is what we do? Should we be giving them American tax dollars to this organization that lied to us?
I was supportive of withholding funding based on development of the appropriate reforms, and to figure out precisely what happened during January, because a week at the beginning.
Well, we're back in it. Have they done the reforms that you were supportive of having them do before we gave them the American people's hard-earned tax money?
I was supportive of reforms.
So you're comfortable now with the Biden decision to get back in the World Health Organization and pay the money, or not?
I am no longer in government.
No, I'm just asking.
I believe that we should have a clear accountability and milestone associated with the funding that we give to the WHO outside
And I'm asking
of
you
our
if that's
assessments.
the case. I'm asking you if that's the case now.
I believe that we should do our assessment. It is the dollars above and beyond the assessment, which I think is about 80% of the dollars, that we should hold directly to required
Okay,
reforms.
we'll take that. Disagree with 80% of the money that's going there that from the United States. How about gain of function research? Should that be allowed?
I don't know all the details of gain of function research.
Here we go. Gain of function research, big time topic. And she responds with that resounding, I don't know. I don't know. Dr. Birx, how do you not know? Gain of function research is nothing more than sheer Frankensteinism. I mean, we're in labs creating viral Frankensteins using America's taxpayer dollars, going to all these labs all over the world, as a matter of fact.
Hey, Greg, I got one for you.
What you got, man? Unbelievable.
And what I'm going to say, I'm going to actually let a clip play it.
It was at this moment that he knew he fucked up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll let that clip play because that clip can say it a lot better than I can. Because it's kind of funny that they did all of this, but they don't have any idea what the people knew at the moments they had it.
I mean, look, did you see her face when he asked her research be, a part of the United States, Virology Institute? Should we be practicing gain of function research? And she paused, and she that look on her face says it all. Gain of function research should be criminalized. It's a crime what they're doing, because it's just so amazing how all of these labs experiments always end up released into the general public through some means.
Taylor has the perfect word for it.
Fishing.
Taylor, something doesn't smell right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But I will say this now. I'm gonna say this now because I did do something without Greg knowing. I am a mod. I will share out the Rumble link because we are going to Rumble again tonight because there's some things we need to say that I know if we say them here that we're gonna be SOL.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have that discussion again tonight over on Rumble. So I will get that link for everybody and just enjoy this because I did see that. I did watch this. All I'm gonna say is it was kind of funny watching her squirm.
Oh yeah, she definitely got her squirm on, and it's evident that she did not want to answer that question. Let's get back to this. Part 2, Deborah Birx testifying before Congress. Again, that's unbelievable stuff. Unbelievable.
Has been made with certain countries. We do not do gain of function research.
So definitely limit with certain countries. Should American tax dollars be used to fund gain of function research?
Well, that's a very big blanket statement, and it's difficult. I mean, there are.
Well, there's been legislation introduced in the United States Congress to say that it shouldn't happen. Some people even we got some doctors who are members of the United States Congress who are saying that we should not fund it at all. It's just way too darn dangerous. And particularly in light of what we've seen with this pandemic for the last 2 years, I tend to share those views. I'm just asking, do you think we should not have American tax dollars funding gain of function research?
The trouble is there are class 4 agents that we work with that are very deadly, that we worked for years to try to improve countermeasures. That is not solely done within the United States. And obviously that would be part of gain of function because you are making changes to the virus to work on countermeasures to control those viruses. And so I would hate for our ability to utilize the great minds of science in allied countries.
How about the more basic question? Should we be sending American tax dollars to labs in China to do any kind of research?
No.
There are critical investigations that we have supported in partnership with China from HIV and to really work on controlling the pandemic in Asia through our work with epidemiologists and the CDC in China.
So you
I think it
support
was
sending American
effective.
tax money to China to do potentially gain-of-function research or other research?
Not gain-of-function research.
Not gain-of-function research. So we should definitely not do that. That's one place you'll draw the line. No tax
Correct.
dollars going to China to do gain-of-function research.
Correct.
Yeah, but I think that's what happened in this situation. I think that's what happened at this lab in Wuhan. It was actually gain-of-function research. I believe it came from the lab. The idea that it was, you know, a bat to a pangolin to a hippopotamus to people, whatever they say. I just don't buy that. But I mean, who knows? The last thing I would say is this: in your testimony, you said being critical of the Biden administration, you said they shouldn't base decisions about pandemic response on polling. I mean, one of the things we hear from the other side is oh, the Republicans are interested in the politics. Well, actually, it's just the opposite. Typical thing. Democrats always accuse us of what they're doing. They're basing it on polling. The people who trust the science are the ones who trust the science. Joe Biden's the one who said, if you have these vaccinations, you're not going to get COVID. That was just a flat out lie. And according to your testimony, the government already knew that wasn't the case, but he made the statement anyway. So we support the science, not the polling, not the lies, not trust the government as the Democrats always want to do. We actually want to trust the science and the facts and the data versus trusting the government. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm over time. Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, what I said was we didn't know at that time whether the vaccines would provide that protection or not.
Well, actually, I think what you said is I asked you the question when the government told us that that the vaccinated could not get the virus. I asked you if that was a guess or a lie, and you said, I don't know. That's what you told us.
I don't know.
And then Joe Biden told us last summer, and you said that was at the start of calendar year 21. And this is July of 21. So this is 7 months later where the president of the United States says, if you have the vaccinations, you're not going to get COVID. Totally false statement. That's what you said the first round of your testimony.
Just to be very clear, there is a period of time that we believe after immunization and after boosting that people do have protection from infection. That does wane, though, and wanes rapidly.
Okay, so she said there was a point where we believed that if you got the shot, you would be protected. But the problem with that is they never walked it back until who knows how many people had been reinfected. How many people had already agreed to go forth and take the shot, believing that they would be fully protected. That's egregious. That's absolute negligence, dereliction of not only the duty to do the right research and get the right answers, but the dereliction of the duty to actually keep the American people informed. I'm not going to talk too much. I want this video to get out. I have to let you know it kills me that I can't talk the way I want to talk. I hate it. I feel muzzled. Pisses me off.
Greg, you and me both. But they're here. I'm going to say this now, even though we're muzzled right now, here in maybe an hour or so, we're going to be able to say what we need to say. Because we know there are things that are going to be said over on a couple of other streams that's going right now, and they won't be able to censor it. But keep it going.
All right, here we go, folks.
People who've got the vaccine, got COVID, Dr.
Yes.
Birx, yes.
I think all of us remember that debate very well, and I think we all were following the scientists when they continued their research and came to the conclusion that we could. The chair now recognizes Mr. Raskin for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. The January 6th committee has determined that Donald Trump has knowingly and deliberately lied. It's obvious from all of the evidence about who won the presidential election. So that just seems irrefutable to me. He continues to lie about who won the presidential election. So Mr. Jordan's line of questioning makes me wonder, when he was out hawking fake medical cures like hydroxychloroquine or injecting yourself with bleach, were these knowing lies, or was this expression of a hope?
Here we go with this. You know what? You know, this walking rectum. You know, so again, they say that the Democrats are not the ones guilty of politicizing COVID, but here he is again politicizing the entire thing. And so they continue to publicly lie, to publicly attack the former administration, when again, everybody knows, you know, which presidency actually had America first in their minds. Their policies proved it. You know, I don't think anybody really got it right with COVID. However, we do know that these people are lying. They've been lying. They're continuing to lie. And they're trying to find a way out. They're trying to find a way out. They're trying to shine light where there is no light. There's no light in what these people are doing to this country. There's no light in what they're doing with the climate change hoax that they're promoting. There's no hiding. There's no light in any of this stuff. This stuff is all darkness. And we don't need to be deceived into believing anything they say. And I like Jim Jordan's question in part one. Should we believe anything the federal government is telling us? The answer is no. Period. Let's continue.
I don't know. My only speculation is that there were people, including physicians, telling the president that these items would work. Outside the White House.
Physicians outside of the White House, people would write to him or call him up. What about when he would say it's going to disappear by Easter, or it's going to disappear? Was that based on any advice you were giving him or any of the scientists within the White House or the CDC?
No, even with that first surge, that estimate of 100,000 to 240,000 Americans lost, that was only that first surge. We hadn't even modeled out what was going to happen in the summer or the fall.
So do you have any idea where that came from, the idea that it was just going to disappear on its own?
No, I think there were individuals communicating with the White House. I think Dr. Atlas was one of them, who believed that if you infected enough people that you would have herd immunity. There was no evidence. In fact, there was evidence to the contrary, that there was.
I got you. So you basically had the equivalent of Team Normal on the election on the inside, like you, and then people from the outside who were feeding him lies and superstition. And that's what he wanted to go with. He wanted to run with that.
So I guess Dr. Simone Gold was some rogue doctor, one of the most decorated doctors and lawyers in this country. I mean,
Hey,
are you serious?
Greg, I got a question. She says a certain phrase a lot. What the hell does she know?
That's a good question. That's a good damn question. What does she know? Does she know anything?
I don't. I will save that comment for Rumble and Odyssey, but I will get to say it. Let's continue.
You did warn on November 1st of 2020 that we're entering the most deadly phase of this pandemic. You were extremely concerned at that point. You called for much more aggressive action by the administration, but you just testified a moment ago that the president failed to act on it because they were interested in the politics of trying to, well, win the election first, but then overthrow, subvert the election, describe themselves as the winners. One of the things that's come out in the January 6th hearings is the idea that Trump knew that he would get more voters showing up on election day because he was telling them not to use mail-in balloting, his supporters. He was telling them to go and vote, and he knew that he would lose very badly in the mail-in balloting. Do you think that there's any connection between?
I wonder how he knew that he was going to lose very badly in the mail-in balloting. I wonder who didn't know that. It's really the question, because I ain't gonna get into that either. But yeah, the mail-in balloting, I'm sure anybody that had a right sense of reality would have known that the mail-in balloting has always historically been a means of election fraud. So yeah, Mr. Weasel, as Taylor was saying, yeah, Taylor, he's a weasel. He really is. Keep it moving.
Between these two things, that he wanted to listen to the people who were telling him, like Dr. Atlas, just to let COVID-19 run wild, because that would then increase the number of votes and presumably his margin on election day, because they thought the Democrats were not willing to go and vote in person because they were afraid of COVID and they would use mail-in balloting.
I wasn't part of any of those discussions. I have no idea. I know within the task force itself, that was never discussed.
Well, why do you think they did not follow your advice as the lead COVID-19 advisor to take much more aggressive action to avoid the most deadly phase of the pandemic yet?
Objection, Your Honor. He's probing. Objection. He's probing the witness. He's leading the witness into saying what he wants the witness to say. Is anybody going to object here? No one need an objection? Because she's clearly not saying what he wants her to say. So he's probing her. This is illegal in the courts, by the way. So he's probing her to answer in the manner that he wants her to answer.
The leading Greg, I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV. I will say that right now. But he's leading her in every freaking question.
Oh, yeah.
He's leading her the way he wants her to go. Just like a certain body that is going to be doing hearings in the fall. I wonder why that is. I wonder why they're going to be doing hearings in the fall. But they're not actually going to. The prosecutors of this case are the Republican House of Representatives people. Just saying.
Just saying.
And independent, that 200 asses, that 2,000 asses, that is a hell of a saying.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's get through this.
And they acted as if you had never even written that.
I think that they believed the counterfactual points that were never supported by data from Dr. Atlas and his team.
Is this the period when you think we lost so many people? I think you've estimated more than 130,000 people, or is that cumulative of the irresponsibility of the entire response?
That's cumulative for that 11 months. Well, actually, from January of 2020 through January of 2021.
Well, we've lost more than 1 million Americans, and had the scientific advice been heeded by the administration, how many people might we have saved?
Well, one of my favorite statistics when people make that determination of 1 million people died from COVID. 1 million people, 1.2 million Americans died from TB in 2019. But where were the mask mandates? Where was the science on this? Where was the vaccines for this? Where was the medication? Did anybody care about the 1.2 million that died in 2019? Anybody care? We know it's an airborne disease. Was anybody forced to wear a mask? No. So let's not pretend that, COVID is the only thing that kills 1 million people in this country. Again, even if that's true or not, we don't even know. But anyway, I'm gonna be quiet. Going on.
Well, that's where the 130,000 comes from, but I want to make it clear to this committee that we have lost 175,000 Americans since January of 2021.
Yeah. And that's just what you were warning
stop
about.
this.
That's what you were warning about in the memo, right? You were saying it's coming, we need to act now.
Yes, but we are still losing Americans today, and I find at a very unacceptable rate when we have the tools to prevent it.
Hey, Greg, take it back for a minute. Take it back for a minute. I want to see what because I think she said 175,000 since January of 2021. I want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Of the irresponsibility of the entire response.
That's cumulative for that 11 months. Well, actually, from January of 2020 through January of 2021.
Well, we've lost more than 1 million Americans, and had the scientific advice been heeded by the administration, how many people might we have saved?
Well, that's where the 130,000 comes from, but I want to make it clear to this committee that we have lost 175,000 Americans since January of 2021.
Yeah. And that's just what you were warning about.
This.
That's what you.
All right, is that what you wanted to hear?
That's what I wanted to hear.
Okay.
Which is bullshit. Which is bullshit.
Oh, whoa. Wait a minute. Whoa, can't say that.
Oh, true.
Can't say that.
But
can't say that.
yeah, let's continue because that is just. I will pull something up for Rumble, so let's continue.
Yeah, let's do yeah. Let's do it. Here we go. We're back.
You were warning about in the memo, right? You were saying it's coming. We need to act now.
Yes, but we are still losing Americans today, and I find at a very unacceptable rate when we have the tools to prevent it.
Thank you so much for your service, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman for yielding back. The chair now recognizes Mr. Foster for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since the beginning of the pandemic, I pushed for greater flexibility and speed in the way that we research and authorize treatments as free as possible from political interference and based on a thorough, rational, yet as prompt as possible analysis of the risks and benefits. Dr. Birx, you wrote in your written statement that emergency use authorizations help streamline the regular process for evaluating potential coronavirus treatments. And unfortunately, we also saw that President Trump and members of his administration abused this process by pressuring FDA scientists to authorize EUAs for things that were unproven and turned out to be ineffective. So what do you believe, what are the tools that you would like to see to rapidly knock down claims of treatments that turn out to be ineffective, at the same time maximizing the speed at which we identify ones that are truly effective, both for in-hospital and on an outpatient basis?
What was frustrating to me is we learned how to deal with this with HIV. And what the NIH did is they moved research money into the community. Because when you do community-centered trials with new agents and you create that community advisory board, you bring everyone in the community up to that shared knowledge. And they also can bring products forward that they think are warranted to be tested. And so there's a dialogue, a partnership between the scientists and the community. I think right now, in the next budget, what would be very appropriate is we have 20% of Americans living in rural areas. We are failing in rural areas, and I think we all can admit that. We're failing for general population-based diseases, but also specifically COVID. We should move 20% of the research dollars to research in our rural areas to really create that partnership between communities and physicians, and actually retain physicians and nurse practitioners in our rural areas, because they will be able to do groundbreaking and critical research that will save their communities.
Yeah, thank you. There was, I remember sort of halfway through the whole sequence. There was a very interesting set of clinical trials that caught my attention, run out of St. Louis University, that were outpatient trials, very simple ones, where you just, you tested positive, you went back home to isolate, someone knocked on your door, deposited a bag of treatments or placebos, you took them, you called in on your cell phone every day for a couple weeks. Very simple things that could easily be implemented in rural areas. And so it seems like having that capability in place at the start of this, would have been tremendous. And
there's still the opportunity to do that. We can change things overnight with investment of resources and human capacity. And you change everything. If you're worried about misinformation in the rural areas, you combat that by working on the ground with communities and community groups. You want to combat vaccine hesitancy? We should have been doing that under flu. Instead, we just measured it every year.
Okay, so she said to combat misinformation, you don't censor Americans. You don't censor Americans. She said you combat it by putting boots on the ground and working in the communities, right? And that's what her advice is. But again, we know that it really was no real intention. The intent wasn't to do right by the people. We do now know there was an agenda. I'm saying too much. Oops, I should have beat myself.
We just said, Black and brown people in rural areas and white people in rural areas don't get vaccinated at the same rate. And we treated it like it was a gas price. It meant nothing. It meant everything. And that kind of behavioral science and partnership between the federal government, the local government, science, and communities is a game changer. We proved that with HIV. We know that as a roadmap that's effective. The community groups that advocate for HIV and work among and with communities are enormously successful.
You mentioned in your written testimony the need for next generation COVID vaccines with enhanced protection, and you mentioned specifically the need for intranasal vaccines with durable IgA mucosal immunity. And it is my impression, in just trying and failing to convince people to get vaccinated, that there's a big difference between asking someone to get injected and having something spritzed up their nose, or maybe eating a pill. And did we make a mistake in not putting more effort into oral vaccines and intranasal vaccines early because we didn't anticipate the vaccine hesitancy problem?
Just like testing. We should have anticipated the vaccine hesitancy problem because we had clear data going back 30 years that adult vaccine hesitancy existed, and it was evidence-based in flu. We did have an intranasal flu vaccine, and it wasn't really studied in behavioral science and implementation science to show that it was more acceptable. And so there are simple things that we can do today that don't cost a lot of money, but engage communities in a real way where you develop trust.
Thank you again for your service, and out of time, and I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen, for yielding back. The chair now recognizes Ms. Maloney for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
You got something you want to say, AC?
Actually, no.
Okay. All right. Continuing on.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Birx asked you earlier about an email you sent in August of 2020. You were describing an Oval Office meeting with President Trump and Dr. Atlas. You said in that email that Dr. Atlas told the president, quote, "No matter what we do, the outcome will be the same," end quote. You also wrote that Dr. Atlas advised President Trump, quote, "Testing is very overrated," end quote. And that, quote, "Case identification is bad for the president's reelection," end quote. And you said that the conclusion of the meeting was, quote, "Dr. Atlas is brilliant and the president will be following his guidance now." After that meeting in the fall and winter of 2020, America experienced some of the deadliest months of the pandemic. We lost the most lives during that period. Dr. Birx, do you believe that Dr. Atlas's recommendations, including his focus on the upcoming election, had an impact on President Trump's pandemic response?
Absolutely, and I believe that went on for months prior to that meeting.
How so? How did it have the impact?
Because starting in April and May, I felt like there were parallel streams of data coming into the White House and parallel analyses that I was not privy to. They would show up in statements. It was subtle at the beginning, but it was very clear when the president did the Axios interview that he was holding up graphs that I had never seen or created. And so they had to come from someone had to request them, or someone was generating them. And I think it gets back to Mr. Raskin's point that you have to have it's great to have debate and it's good to have scientific debate, but you have to agree on the data being the data. And you have to fundamentally move from that place. It's why we wrote the governor's reports.
So if we had information about the PCR test being very inaccurate, would testing be overrated? Just a question, y'all. Think about it.
We wrote the governor's reports so that the governors and the White House could be exactly in the same place in interpreting what was happening county by county. And that's what, when you no longer agree on what is actually happening in the country and what needs to be done, and there's not consensus on that, then you lose the ability to execute in the maximum efficient and effective way.
Well, do you think if the president had followed your recommendations and your data, instead of two sets of data and responding in a different way to Dr. Alice's recommendations, do you think it would have saved lives?
Absolutely. And I look forward to all those emails and reports. I wrote an analysis of the epidemic daily for over 320 days. It clearly shows that the task force and everyone in the West Wing was clearly aware of what the pandemic was doing and the predictions on what would happen and the solutions to combat this. Because I had something, fortunately, that many of the others on the task force didn't have, is I was grounded in working at the community level to really understand that it's great to talk from a microphone in Washington or Atlanta, but you have to see the reality on the ground so that you can really support the reality on the ground and enforce the ability to really implement those changes that would support people thriving and surviving COVID-19. With 1 million dead, I think we can, and I know a lot of people focus on the 1 million dead, and I'll just say this very quickly. Hospitalizations in people over 70 is not benign. It's not benign. So let's not just say, I mean, hundreds of thousands and millions of people above that million who died have significant, what we call morbidities from being hospitalized. So this is not a benign illness. And hospitalizations in someone who is older is not a benign moment in time. We will see rising in other cardiovascular and other infectious diseases in those individuals who have those prolonged hospitalizations. And that's why I know everybody focused.
Yeah, but still no mention of, the injuries from the vaccines and the people that have died from the vaccine itself. Still no mention of that. And I'll be quiet. I'm saying too much.
Is on the deaths, but I want to make it clear many more Americans have suffered really significantly from being hospitalized, and another whole group still has long COVID. And so, this isn't trivial. This virus is not trivial and should not just be immediately discarded as we're doing fine. We are not doing fine yet.
Well, my time is almost up, but Trump himself indicated at the time that he wanted less testing, true? And you, at
Correct.
the same time, thought we needed more testing.
Correct.
And my time is, and you believe more testing would have saved lives.
Correct.
Put this comment up there from Independent Men United. She just said they had comorbidities from being hospitalized. Independent Men United. That says it all. That says it all. Continuing on.
My time has expired. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you very, very much. I think that we've exhausted our second round, and
Mr. Chairman?
yes, I yield to the gentleman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to introduce this excellent staff report called the Atlas Dogma, the Trump administration's embrace of a dangerous and discredited herd immunity via mass infection strategy, June 2022.
Without objection. As a student of history, I often quote George Santayana's admonition that those who cannot remember history are condemned to repeat it.
I second that. We can see that happening in the country right now.
Greg, if you look on my Facebook page, because I know I have some people watching over there. The actual cover of the Facebook page actually says that quote.
Yeah, it's very important. It's
very important.
Let's get through this. This is almost over. Matter of fact, technically it is over. And this guy here, Claiborne, is the last person to speak. And I preferably don't give a damn what he has to say, but we're going to listen to it. There we go.
But in order to remember the past, you must first learn what happened. And I want to thank you, Dr. Birx, for appearing before us today to help us learn the history of the Trump administration's failed response to the coronavirus pandemic so that hopefully we can avoid any repetition.
Well, she's already testified that it's still not being handled right. So again, they try to make these things about Trump. So we know what that's about. But again, she testified that this current administration still is not doing all that they could do. And you can only, think that maybe there's just another agenda, period.
We have learned and will remember how the Trump administration's failures resulted in many thousands of preventable American deaths.
All right, Mr. Claiborne, why didn't you mention the 175,000 that has died since this year? No Trump administration. Once again, they're targeting someone, even having this hearing. This hearing really isn't about, what, we can do to, curb COVID-19. No, they're trying to find some way to, once again, keep Donald Trump from running in 2024. I think that's obvious at this point.
We have learned and will remember how politics was prioritized over science. We have learned and hopefully remember how damaging it is when people in positions of authority undermine public trust in those like Dr. Birx with life-saving medical expertise. We cannot change the terrible history of the coronavirus pandemic, but we can remember it so that no future administration is condemned to repeat the Trump administration's failed response and its deadly consequences. With that, and without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days within which to submit additional written questions for the witness to the chair, which will be forwarded to the witness for her response. This meeting is adjourned.
All right, people, the links for where we're going are in the chat, because I am gonna play something, but we're leaving Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and D Live. If you're on one of those platforms and you want to hear the rest of this, please go to Rumble and go to Odyssey. If you have a subscription there, just put my name in, Angry Conservative. You will find us. But This is going, all I have to say is, Greg, I know this is your channel, but what I want to do is go like this to, as Steven Crowder would do for YouTube.